guys, and welcome back to another All Heart video. Today we are going to be talking about how to properly introduce an activity to your child. For those of you that are brand new to Montessori, I felt that this video was incredibly important, especially because presenting this activity is going to be the foundation in setting up the rest of the activities for your child. So I wanted to do just this introductory video, just specifically for those of you that want to know where to go from here. So in our last videos, we talked about how to set up Montessori in the home. And if you haven't seen that one, I'll go ahead and leave the link down in the description below. But that is my recommendation as far as where to start. From there, we moved on to decluttering all of our Montessori toys, and that way we were just left with the ones that we wanted to present on our shelf. And that will also be linked down below. And then our last video talked all about setting up our Montessori activities on our shelf. So where do we go from there? From there, it's important to know how to present these activities to your child, especially if this is the first time that they are going to be introduced to an activity. And if you are a beginner Montessori parent, you want to be able to know how to properly show these activities to your child. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on this video. Montessori activities are based on developing the whole child. Now we begin by firstly observing our child, seeing what types of things they are gravitating towards, what things they are interested in at the time. And then we as parents go ahead and give them those necessary tools that they need to continue building upon those specific skills. Toddlers need activities that consist of their hands being used in various ways. They need activities that will help them work on their hand and eye coordination, hand-to-hand transfer, carrying objects, gross motor skills, communication, and language. Those are the main categories of activities that we want to set up for our child in order for them to develop all of these skills. That's why a lot of these Montessori activities are set up in a way where they are able to work on one skill point at a time, and it develops that sense of repetition so that they are able to repeat that activity over and over again until they feel that they have mastered it. And then they can either move on to a more difficult version of that activity, or they may be done with that activity and they may want to move on to something else. When introducing a new activity to your child, you do so by giving them a bit of a presentation. And this presentation has a series of little steps that you want to take. The first being actually removing an entire activity from the shelf, setting it down either on a table or on the floor or wherever they're supposed to work on their activity, setting it down, actually working on that activity, and then the very last step would be showing them how to put it back on the tray and placing it back on the shelf. So you want to be able to go through these movements nice and slowly. It's also incredibly important to let your child kind of dictate what activity they want to work on at the time. So you as the parent, and I have mentioned this before, you as the parent are the observer. You are there to observe, to make sure that they have the necessary materials that they need in order to build upon those skills. And your child is the one that is going to get to choose what they want to work on, depending on what activity they are interested in. This is one of the things that made me love and turn to Montessori, was the fact that children are the ones that get to choose what to work on and what to learn. You want to make sure that after your child has selected whatever activity that they want to work on, that you allow them as much time as they need to work on the activity. So in no ways do you want to rush them. In no ways do you want to basically interrupt that process that they are going through while learning this activity. You just want to be there to observe. Now, if at any point while they are working on this activity, you see that they are maybe struggling with it a little bit, at that point, then we can go ahead and step in and say, watch. Show them exactly how the toy is supposed to be used or the activity is supposed to be used, and then let them try again. So again, we are just playing the part of an observer, and in case they are struggling with an activity, then we can go ahead and step in and show them again. Now in Montessori, there is an acronym, and it is called SHOW. And that means slow hands omit words. Now, what does that mean? That means, let me go ahead and take this activity off the shelf. So when you are about to show them how to do the activity, this is the very first step. I am showing. I'm not going to be saying, okay, the first thing we do is we take the tray off of the shelf and we set it down. That's way too many words, okay? Slow hands omit words, meaning no words. The reason for that is because then it makes it a lot more difficult for your child to figure out what to concentrate on. Are they supposed to be concentrating on you and what you're saying, or are they going to be concentrating on how to properly perform the activity? So what we want them to concentrate on is the activity itself and not so much what you are saying. So first step, grab the tray, show them the tray. Show them that you are grabbing the entire tray and not just picking up separate pieces. You're going to bring the tray over to, let's say, a table or the floor. I'm just going to hold it up just for this demonstration. The next thing that you're going to do is show them how to actually use the activity. So the first one that you would actually use for this activity would be this big purple one. And I would lift it up and I would say, watch. And then I would look over at them to make sure that they were actually paying attention. Then I would go on to the next one, watch. And so on and so forth. After you have shown them the activity, then set it back down. Set it back down in front of your child and see how they interact with it. Again, don't step in, don't talk in between them trying to work out the activity. Just step back, let them do it, let them work on it for as long as they want. And then if you see that they are still struggling, then that is when you would want to step in. The very last step would be, once they've completed the activity, to make sure that you place it back on the tray and show them to place it back on the shelf. Now, if your son or daughter is still a little bit too young and they still have a little bit of a challenge when picking up the entire tray, or you see that they feel a little bit overwhelmed, then go ahead and help them with perhaps half of it, or say, okay, why don't you help me put just the little donuts back on the tray, and then mommy will put this back on the tray and help you carry it. But you basically want to step with baby steps and then work your way on from there. That way they actually perform the entire activity. Now remember that I mentioned in my last video that Montessori activities are complete in that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That being said, this activity, the beginning of it would be to remove the activity from the shelf. The middle would be working on that entire activity. The end is placing everything back on the tray and then everything back on the shelf. By then, they have completed the entire activity. It is important that you emphasize the placement of the activity back on the shelf, because that will complete the activity. And like I said, you want them to know the entire structure of this Montessori activity as a whole, which is to complete that beginning, middle, and end in order for them to feel like they have done the entire activity how they're supposed to do it. Putting away that activity at the end also gives you and your child a sense of calm and order in that play space that you have created. So it is very important that you do all of these steps and make sure that your child learns how to properly finish each one. Now, another example of an activity that I have set up, which is perfect for their hand and eye coordination and their gross motor skills. Now, let's say that they are having trouble with not all of the pieces, but maybe some of them are just presenting themselves as a little bit more difficult than others. So let's say, for examples, are little lacing beads. I noticed that my daughter was having an easier time threading the circles because they are shorter in space and they were a lot easier for her to hold. And when she would thread the little lace through, it didn't have to go through as far. So she was able to see it quickly on the other side and she was able to pull it through. Now, I noticed that when she was using these, because these are a lot longer, that anytime that she would thread it through, it wouldn't go through all the way. And so when she would try to kind of pick it up on the other side, she wasn't able to do it as easily. So she was getting a little bit frustrated with these. So when I first introduced these to her, I only gave her the pieces that had a shorter distance of the lace having to go through them. And I took out all of the ones that posed a little bit more challenging. Once she got these very, very well, then I went ahead and started introducing the longer ones. So that's something to keep in mind. I saw that she was having a little bit more of a difficult time with some of them. I removed those so that she wouldn't get frustrated with the entire activity and that way wouldn't want to do the activity anymore. And then she kind of found her rhythm with the smaller pieces. And then once she mastered those skills, she was able to perform the same things with the more difficult pieces. So that's another way of just slightly modifying an activity for your child. Montessori activities are set up into 5 major categories. And this is a topic that we are going to cover in depth in our very next video. So make sure that you have subscribed if you haven't already to join our small family, and make sure to ring that little notification bell so that you are notified of when this next video posts. And those 5 categories are hand and eye coordination, music and movement, practical life activities, arts and crafts, and language. So in this next video, I'll be showing you how to properly display all of those categories, either on your activity shelves, in the trays, or just around your playroom. And that way you can properly set them up so that your child is nice and engaged and they are really wanting to interact with that activity. So that will be coming up next. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you are notified of when this next video posts. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.